These are the Masters of the Universe toys from my Gen X toy collection. Master! The Masters of the Universe toys hit the market in 1982, and unlike the more simple Star Wars figures at the time, they were a little bit bigger at 5.5 inches tall, and they had things like a rotating waist and more accessories in general, especially for stuff like the main characters, which was there to justify the fact that they were roughly triple what the Star Wars figures cost was at that time. The main characters also showed up in a cartoon series made from 1983 to 1985, and in 1987, they came out with Masters of the Universe live action movie starring Ivan Drago himself, Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. And although it had the premise of being something that could have been awesome, unfortunately it was a pretty terrible movie. Based on an old photo I found, I had a lot more of the characters originally, but I probably sold them for $2 at a garage sale in my youth and just hung on to a few of them. Great plan, spend $7 or $8 for a figure, sell it for $2, and then watch them grow to say $60 in value today. Awesome investment. But nonetheless, I did keep quite a few of them, and here they are. First, we have He-Man and Battle Cat. I think I actually purchased these separately, not as a package deal, but I don't have the boxes for those, so I really couldn't tell you. If we start with Battle Cat, Battle Cat has the saddle and the helmet as well. It's basically a tiger that's green with some orange stripes. And He-Man, main character, has his shield, his battle axe, and he has his sword. And the sword, if I remember right, it should have kind of like a knuckle protector on it that helps him hold it. Doesn't have that, so I think that may have come off. And I'll talk more about how that fits with Skeletor's sword in a minute. But from what I can tell, both He-Man and Battle Cat are all as came from the factory, minus that side piece over here on the handle for his sword. The next figures did come in a kit because I do have the box down here. Teela and Zor. And Zor was the Falcon, has his little bomb pack on, has his stand or perch, and there's a trigger on the back of his, no, not like said an offensive word that sends him into a tizzy and pouts on the internet, but a trigger that you push and it flops his rubbery wings up and down. So that came as a kit, and Teela still has her Cobra headset on or whatever, and shield and Cobra staff. And since it was the 80s, I'm sure a lot of kids had Teela dancing on the perch and the rest of the guys throwing dollars at her. And Teela's headdress, or whatever you want to call it, does have a crack right up at the top. It is broke right there, but it still stays in place. And you can see Teela is a squat everyday kind of gal. A little bit of foreshadowing for what the body types would be in the future. Next is Cyclone. And Cyclone has a dial back here that you can turn and make a little cyclone with his arms because they free fall out. Pretty wild. He's got his little hologram type chest radar thing on, and he has his shield, so everything looks to be where it needs to be with him. The next one is Roboto, not to be confused with RoboCop, a similar 80s icon. Roboto has a bunch of working gears inside, and you can see that they move as you rotate the bottom half of him, Arms go up and down. He's got a little jaw that, oh, it actually goes up and down as you rotate the body as well. And he has an interchangeable arm. Goes from that to a claw to an axe. So he's got 3 weapons included. Insert into that arm, and that's his. And I believe all these were on the good side. The bad ones I have left, I have Jitsu. And he is riding on Night Stalker. Night Stalker has movable cannons, and a movable cannon back here, and a spinnable tail. Legs appear to be fixed. Basically a fancy robot horse is what this looks like. And Jitsu has a spring-loaded hand for chopping boards. Wants to do some Rex Kwando. If anybody wants a roundhouse kick from me while I've got this spring-loaded hand, forget about it. And he's got a samurai sword. So Jitsu is in good shape, as is the Night Stalker horse. And Skeletor. This is probably the most desirable of the characters. I don't know if he or He-Man are actually more popular, but he is in the land shark. So first let's talk about the land shark. This particular land shark has a, again, not an offensive triggering, but just a little trigger down here that you can push, and it'll open and close Jaws' mouth. He's going to need a bigger boat. The cannon on the left goes up and down. The cannon on the right actually broke at one point. So I have it glued in place, so it does not rotate, only this one does. If you move it along with its wheels, the jaw opens up and down as well. It's kind of cool. So aside from the broken cannon, that should be all happy. And then we have Skeletor. And Skeletor has the other half of the sword. And this one is also missing the little kind of knuckle protector thing. But he has the sword and he has his goat head staff, which probably has something to do with 80s heavy metal and the fear that all heavy metal is all about Satan and stuff. But nonetheless, here's Skeletor, and the cool thing about him, if you recall from your cartoon history, is that you can take the 2 halves of the swords and you put them together like this, and you make one sword, and that's the power of Grayskull. And if you do that, it'll lead us to our next item here, which is you can push this in the front of Castle Grayskull, and when you do, unlocks it and the jaw opens, and then you can go in and take over Castle Grayskull. So Skeletor is there. I'll separate the swords back out, and we'll talk about Castle Grayskull. If we look at Castle Grayskull from the front, the only thing we've really noted so far is that the 2 sword halves together open the drawbridge on the lower jaw here, called a jaw bridge instead of a drawbridge if I'm being clever. And the front is pretty much as you see it, nothing too fancy. This was supposed to be the good guy hangout, and I believe there was a thing called Snake Mountain that was similar for Skeletor and his cronies hangout. If we look at the inside, that's where more of the fun is. All right, Castle Grayskull has a whole lot of pieces, so if you're looking for similar kits online, one of the main things you want to do is make sure they have all the pieces. And from what I can tell, although I just spilled half of them, all of them are included for the castle. So one of the big ones is going to be this weapon rack. And you can see there's a mace over here, a shield on this side, a gun, spears, axes, whatever else in here. So there's a lot of little weapons, and they go on this rack, and that was part of the whole training thing. So in theory, Man-at-Arms, who I think I sold at a garage sale, would train the people. So this is supposed to be a trainer, if I remember right. If you think about like a boxing trainer, like I'm going to hit this side and then this side comes back to me, back and forth. And we have all these different weapons. So he could train them for battle. So we'll just stick this off to the side. There is a ladder put together. It has 2 hooks on the top. So you could put it up here, wherever you want. Probably here makes the most sense. And they can climb up to the 2nd floor. However, if they had say Tila had a tough day on the squat rack and she doesn't feel like climbing the ladder, we do have an elevator. That's right. Tila could stand here and she could take the elevator so her quads and glutes don't get too bad of a workout if they're still holding lactic acid from 2 days ago. And get her a little Cobra staff in here. And up we go. And there's the elevator. So we have that as an option. That's the original string from what I can tell, and the original gargoyle that's the activator on it. There are some different cardboard things. This is the kind of Man-at-Arms Training Center logo apparently. Think of like Gold's Gym, but real early. This is supposed to be a little dungeon. You can kind of see the sticker down here. There's a screen and kind of control panel back up here. And there's another little cardboard display there. We have a flag behind the throne. And the throne was for, let's say that you had Mr. Cyclone was standing over here on the fancy rug. These guys are harder than you think to balance. And Skeletor happens to be in control at the time of the Castle Grayskull. He can rotate his chair and drops him down into the dungeon. When you go back, simply rotate it back to the front. There is also a flag up on top, and you have the cannon. And this is the one thing that I saw look like it might be broke, is that maybe there was a tab or something here. So the cannon still sits in place, but it does look like there might be a tab that was just to reinforce it. But cannon is, yeah, you'll see how it kind of tips up a little bit. But nonetheless, the cannon is still there as well. And as I mentioned, the door, you can push the lock back and forth and unlock it until someone gets the 2 halves of the sword together. So from what I can tell, Castle Grayskull is all complete. Everything that was included originally, just a little potential tab crack on the cannon mounts. As with all these videos, as soon as it posts, I'll be putting an ad on eBay listing for the whole collection for sale if I haven't already prearranged a sale with somebody personally. And at that time, I will put the link to the eBay listing in the description at the bottom. And you can also go on the website, ychrome.com, on the Gen X page and look for the Excel sheet that's downloadable that lists all the different pieces to this and any defects that we've talked about in the video. If you haven't done so, please click the link below to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, and let's live for today.